Hello, I'm Frank Kaufmann. I'm the president of the Settlement Project. I'm doing a piece today on the resurgence of Jihadi violence on European soil. And we have the great luck to be joined today by Professor Tawfik Hamid. Dr. Hamid is both a medical doctor and an MLit um, in his educational background. He is an expert on radicalism and is a Muslim reformer. Dr. Hamid is an Islamic thinker and reformer and a one-time Islamic extremist himself. From Egypt, he was a member of the radical Islamic organization Jamaah Islamiyah, JI, of Egypt, and worked closely with Dr. Ayman Zawahiri, who later became the second in command of Al Qaeda. After being radicalized in the JI approximately 35 years ago, Dr. Hamid had an awakening of his human conscience, recognized the threat of radical Islam, and started to teach modern, peaceful interpretations of classical Islamic core texts. Dr. Hamid is the author of Inside Jihad, How Radical Islam Works, Why It Should Terrify Us, How to Defeat It. Inside Jihad has been recommended by many experts in the field, including in the field of countering radicalism, including two former CIA directors, some senators, congresspeople, security experts, and many others. Please join me in welcoming to the program Dr. Tawfik Hamid. Welcome to the show, Professor Hamid. We're very grateful that you could make it on with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Frank, anytime.
Wonderful. Thanks. We have such a short time, even though for most people 30 or 40 minutes sounds long, but the issues are extensive and profound. And so I'm going to be in a bit of a rush because you're a precious entity, and it's a rare chance to have someone with your prowess and expertise in this particular field. So I'm gonna get through a couple of intro pieces, but mostly we just want to get all the insight and wisdom and knowledge that comes from your extensive experience. The basic reason why I've asked you to be on with me today is that there have been a series of can you help me first? Is the term jihadi correct, politically incorrect, or does it accurately describe a type of violence that is committed in the name of Islam, even though we all...
Absolutely. In the Arab world, when the media use the word jihadi,
Yes.
they even in the Arab media, they mean the violent radical ones that do suicide bombing and all this group. So absolutely correct.
Okay, very good. I'll use that as the term, and thanks. I feel more confident now. And there have been three recent events in Europe they're particularly gruesome. They're horrific and shocking. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a period of calm. There was an extended kind of cessation of the success of these types of attacks. And then there was a beheading in France, a beheading in Nice, a teacher in a classroom, then in a church, another beheading. There was a mass shooting in Vienna. It was near a synagogue. We don't know the extent to which the synagogue was central to that. And so I have all of these events with little blurbs in front of me, but I don't want to lose or waste too much time going through that. I hope that our listeners are familiar with these strong pieces of news that have been widely disseminated in the media. The same day that the Nice attack happened, it was a knife attack, with 3 dead, several injured, 1 beheaded. That same day, a copycat was apprehended in Yvelines, a Paris suburb. I don't know if this would have been coordinated to happen in more than one place. In some of my reading, I see that several, not several, but at least one, if not more than one of these assailants and violent, extremely violent attackers had been the beneficiaries of the efforts of European nations to embrace them, to educate them, to provide them scholarships. Um, one of them had been apprehended and had been confirmed as having left these points of view, and then this very one who was released back into public life turned out to, in fact, commit violent jihadi assault, resulting in horrific death and disruption of society. The lawyer of the Vienna mass shooting says he was a nice boy from a good family who fell in with the wrong crowd. And this whole ability for people to just miss what's in front of their eyes, I think you, Tawfik, are having a special insight into those kinds of things. So if this is enough of a setup, I'd love to hear where you come in and what you can offer us in terms of helping our understanding.
Yeah. Thanks, Frank, for this introduction to the topic. I'm basically a medical doctor. I was graduated originally, I live here in the United States now, but I was graduated in Cairo, Egypt. And during my life, I joined the radical Islamic group called Jama'ah Islamiyah. And I met actually with currently the first in command of Al Qaeda, Ayman al Zawahiri. And I was going to travel to Afghanistan to wage jihad and share in the phenomena of jihad in Afghanistan itself. But thank God I didn't continue. Anyway, during my life, I also studied, in addition to medicine, and developed novel techniques in cognitive psychology. So it happened that I came from within these groups, and I have depth in the knowledge of cognitive psychology, or the field of cognitive psychology. And in addition, I started the modern commentary for the Quran at the theological level, which actually garnered more than 2 million followers. And I have also many followers following my YouTube videos. We are talking here about millions of views, tens of millions.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
Fantastic.
so this is the background, and this put me in a position where I can offer, I believe, the most important part of the problem, which is the solution. Many people have spoken about the problem for years and years and years. Yes, we know there is a problem. Then what is the solution? This is what I can offer.
Wonderful. I just want to say, Tawfik, that we will post all the links to these YouTube videos and the ways our listeners can learn from this ongoing success that you have with communicating your insights. So if I may, I'm going to add just two more little thoughts. These were offered by friends. One is that the death of major leaders in violent jihad, such as the ISIS leader al-Baghdadi and the Iranian military figure Soleimani. Is that correct? Qasim Soleimani.
Soleimani, yes.
Yeah. That, and also the evolution of some peace towards Israel is kind of arousing a certain type of jihadi Islam interpretation, saying not so fast, that's not Islam, this is Islam. It's that the re-arising or the new increase in incidents, is it something like in where there's a vacuum, like in Gangland, New York or something, where there's a vacuum, people are vying to see who's going to be the next big leader. So this is an additional angle. If your insights can also speak to either of those things, and then it's yours Please take it away.
Actually, and before just explaining this point, I would like to mention that my YouTubes and my the Quranic commentary and what I do is tip is in Arabic language. So probably your audience will find it difficult to follow
Okay.
for them, but they are in the Middle East,
Oh,
the source of the problem itself. I
very
believe
good.
the source of the problem comes from the Middle East, and it is fair to fight it there. And when I mean fight, I
Yes,
fight it at the ideological and psychological levels using certain forms of effective education. This is how can I
very good.
summarize it. And using the internet as a vehicle. Regarding the point that you mentioned, look, Frank, I see what happened in Europe. It's we can always try to find some reasoning, like the killing of Qasim Soleimani, and the killing of some leaders of Al Qaeda, like Al Baghdadi. And you can say yes, they are trying to rise up again after this killing to say here we are here, for example. But I see it from a different angle, an additional angle, not a different, but additional angle, which is there is a level of radicalism that exists in the mindset of many in Muslims in Europe, as particularly young Muslims, and this level of radicalism may manifest and may not manifest depending on situations. Initially, they can, for example, find the reason like the peace treaty with Israel and start to do some attacks here and there to object to it. Or some criticism of the Prophet Muhammad and what we have seen in France, for example,
Yeah.
so they can find always a reason to justify the attacks. And today they can say, oh, you insulted the Prophet. Next day, they
Okay.
can tell you you drink alcohol. Next day,
Mm,
you don't wear the hijab. Next day, you don't stone women to death. So it's endless, actually. The level of radicalism
mm,
must be treated because today they will find a reason. Tomorrow, believe me, they will find another reason. And this is, as I
mm,
mentioned to you one day, it's like cancer. You don't detect the damage that it can cause and its real threat until it is relatively late when the cancer
mhm,
mass increase to a certain level. So as long as the radicals increase in any European society, they may not manifest until they reach a certain level, and then you have huge number of population that it will be too late actually to resist them. Some people think Europeans
mm,
may kick Muslims out of Europe. I see it the other way around. Muslims may kick the Europeans from Europe. So it's a growing problem that you don't see its real effect and the damage until it is too late when the number of people who believe in such a belief, who want to implement Sharia rules in Europe, exceed certain numbers, then even by democracy, they can take the lead and control things. And whoever object to them, whoever refuse the Sharia rules, he can be punished by them violently. So we are dealing with
mm,
a real time time bomb. Simple.
mm, mm. Now, this is riveting or stunning to hear. It's a kind of a wake up call with your alarm on steroids. I mean, it's like ringing. But can you, before we go into this, which is hugely important, how is it? How do people not see radicalization? What goes on where people are capable of functioning? They're going to their office, they're going to their school. What is that capacity, either for the
Yeah.
non-Muslim Europeans to miss it, or for
Mhm.
the jihadi committed people to be so
Uh,
capable of
uh,
this?
I'll tell you, Frank, the real core of the problem and why the Europeans are not detecting it. Some people say when you grow when you grow very gradually, like you put in the frog in a water that's cold, and
In
you go
boiling,
gradually,
yeah.
it doesn't feel it until it is already boiling or too late for it to escape. But if you put it all of a
Yes.
sudden, they feel it. So one of the reasons is that it's very gradual problem. But this is not the main reason why Europeans do not get it. Europeans do not get it because they do not, or probably refused to have a clear definition for radical Islam or metrics.
Mm,
Since I came to
mm,
Washington, D.C., I tried to put clear metrics for radical Islam. I call them
mm,
ABCs for radical Islam, which is A for
mm,
apostate killing, B, barbaric treatment of women like stoning and beating women, C, calling Jews pigs and monkeys, D, declaring jihad on non-Muslims to spread the religion, E, enslavement of female war prisoners and raping them like ISIS, F, fighting
mm,
Jews before end days and killing all of them, which is a standard Sharia teaching, G, gay killing. So what I try to do is put metrics, because if you don't have metrics to measure something, you can continue forever without dealing with it. If, for example,
mm.
if you want to try to treat diabetes and you don't have metrics, who is diabetic, who is non-diabetic, how would you even start treatment? You see what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
the real problem comes to the definition. And in fact, I am writing today an op-ed, this is just coincidence, about putting metrics for radical Islam.
Mhm.
And I wrote about it before, but I put it in my book, Inside Jihad, because without having metrics to define what is radical and what is not radical, you can't really even start solving this problem. So the French, the Europeans, and the British, if you ask it, them in the government, what is the definition of radical Islam that you have that you are trying to fight? I can reassure
Mhm.
you, they don't have. So they speak politically, yeah, we are fighting radical Islam, and more money goes to our organization to fight and radical Islam. But what is radical Islam? Is it just terrorism? This is the last step of radicalism. This is the manifestation of radicalism. If you want to treat the
I see.
disease,
I
not
see.
the
Yes.
symptom, then you have to fight radicalism. If you don't have definition or metrics to measure radicalism and evaluate it, then it's just useless.
Yeah. This is very
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And then I guess there's a related problem of the fear to say anything at all in certain
Yeah,
circles. Correct.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
uh, right. This is one of the problems that God forbid anyone would ever say any Muslim is any a problem ever anywhere. It's kind of a constraint of, I don't know, call it polite company or
Mm.
proper respect, and then you're allowing great danger to be brewing on, all right,
Absolutely.
on
This
your.
what happened already, but the Europeans need to distinguish, and even here in America, people need to distinguish between attacking attacking Muslims as human beings and attacking specific ideologies that promote violence. For example,
Excellent.
that can make a clear distinction. And once this is made clearly, in fact, you are protecting Muslims. When you fight radical views and opinions and ideas, then you are protecting young Muslims from being indoctrinated with this evil, and you are protecting the whole society. So I think
Yes.
we need to distinguish between Muslims as human beings and individuals. Many of them are kind and nice and lovely people, and the
Hmm.
ideology that's being taught in certain places, mosques, Islamic schools, that has nothing to do with Muslims. This is an ideology that's against our humanity. You simply cannot respect women rights and respect the stoning of women to death in Sharia at the same time. You simply cannot. It's impossible to
Mm.
respect gay rights and respect Sharia laws that justify killing them with no mercy. You have to define where are you standing? Are you standing with humanity and civilization? Or you are standing with Sharia laws because you don't want to offend some people. So I think I prefer some form of confrontation with this ideology and asking simply, you can say, if the Islamic organizations do not clearly denounce these values that I mentioned, we can't consider them moderate organizations. You need some definition.
I
Otherwise,
see.
your support will go to the radicals, not the moderates.
Yeah. So there could actually be some sort of natural normal paperwork in which the organizations need to comply with certain regulations and standards that are just simply humane. They're not
Absolutely.
targeted for.
Absolutely.
Mm, that's yeah. That's a great recommendation. As you were speaking, I'm thinking that there has to be a tremendous number of French Muslims or Muslims that they love their country there or Vienna or Austria, wherever we are in Europe and or
Mm.
the US, that would be want in every way to cooperate with the
Absolutely.
undermining of the, but they must have certain unique difficulties. They can't
Sure.
they can't be
Sure.
seen to be siding with laicite or what is.
Yeah.
Can you speak to
Yeah.
that? Is there something uniquely
Yeah.
difficult? Maybe you
Of
yourself have
course.
certain.
The problem with people who are trying to reform, I can say people who reject the violent interpretation are of two kinds or types. Type 1 and type 2. Type 1 are people who reject them but do not really put an alternative or have an alternative. They just give blind eye to them and continue as cultured Muslims without thinking too much in this stuff or accepting them. But these people are
Mhm.
okay. They are harmless and they are fine, but they do not have the capability of making the change. Okay, those who
Yes.
are reformers and who have the knowledge and capability of making the change and defeating radical Islam at the ideological and psychological levels, these people are deprived from support from everyone, nearly everyone. They are working at individual levels, like myself and others, many of us, but we lack any form of support from governments, from individuals, from organizations. It's just individual errors, but efforts. How on the other side, the radicals are well organized. They have organizations giving them money. They can get money from some Islamic countries. So they are well equipped and they have a lot of money to spend on mosques. They are controlling many mosques, and people who are reformers
Mm.
are just too weak financially to make the change. So they needed a change.
Mm.
So they are working, they are doing a lot of effort, but you can magnify this effort by 100,000 times if someone came behind them and selected them correctly, who is effective, who is not, and just supported the ones who can make, or the ones who can make a real change on ground. So I think without having this backing, it will be just individual efforts that will die. The other ones have support from everywhere, and they pretend that they are actually moderates, and they gain even money from some European countries. And
Yeah.
that's why Europe is really going to face a major disaster in the future.
It's very interesting. But is there a problem like if a person who is a faithful practicing Muslim with a deep care for the wholesome upbringing of young people, and they start to get government money, suddenly they're tools of the enemy or allied with the enemy, or do, do you understand? It's like that the money to help is also going to draw attack from a certain side or a certain type of person
Yeah,
that
but
says, "Oh, he doesn't
but
really."
radical groups actually who disguise as moderates are gaining money from the governments. This is number one. Number
I
two, there
see.
are enough moderate people who will not now in the Islamic world, based on the work of many of the reformers, that is sufficient really to make this acceptable by many. Uh, and let
Okay.
me be very clear, governments can also support such things in many covert ways. So, and it can take the title educational missions, for example, not necessarily theological or religious. You can call it educational
Got
missions
it.
to bring peace and tolerance between civilizations. So there are many ways. If there is a will, Frank, there is a way. But they don't have the will. They are
Sure.
waiting,
Yeah,
and
you're right.
it will be too late for them. Believe me, they will not be able to make a change, and it might end in civil wars, because the moment the threshold of the Muslim population reach certain percentage of the society, if this percentage started to promote Sharia rules in the communities, then let me know how the European will feel when some people try to implement the Taliban and Al Qaeda and ISIS style in their countries. Are they going to stay silent, or are they going to refuse this? And if they refuse, they will be attacked violently, and you never know how it can go. So I think it will be more wise for them to have a stand and think again on their failed approaches to contain this problem, and try to use correct approaches in the future.
This is outstanding, Tawfik. I want to come back to this. I think is the most important moment of our short conversation together, and I will come back to this at the end. I don't, because it's the high relief, it's the shining light from our short visit here. There's one small thing I want to talk about, and then I want to come back to wrap up again on this point of funding of education and the type of imbalance of the radicals getting the type of support that you're describing. The one thing I wanted to ask is that there's a habit of intellectuals or a habit of analysis that says, oh, this is nothing other than just like the gangs of Los Angeles or the gangs of New York. It's basically, some kid, like if you're in a gang in LA, you have to go commit a murder, you have to go do some violent thing, you have to go rape a woman. And so they see a similar type of dynamic of ghettoized, disenfranchised, and people argue that the Islam of it all is just overlay. It's just added fuel, but you're basically looking at like membership of that has violent and disruptive. Can you just
absolutely. You raised a very important point, and there is a very simple answer to it. Number one, if these statistics is showing that the rate of suicide bombing and beheading is in the minorities that are non-Muslim minorities, like Buddhists, Hindus, Coptic Christian minorities, Baha'i group communities, is the same as the young Muslims, then they are correct. It has nothing to do with ideology. It's all about being disfranchised or a small minority suffering like other small minorities. So if they can compare the statistics, they will have the answer, or the first answer to this problem. The second answer is simple. If it is a gang, gangs usually do not have a lot of social media support for them. When someone beheads someone as a gang in somewhere, you don't find many people on social media saying, oh, excellent, go ahead, we will love you, God bless you. You don't see such things. I can reassure you, if the French people went to the social media of young Muslims in France, I have done this in the Middle East, and I am telling you, in France, they will find the same results. A majority of people, or significant percentage at least, are highly supportive of these beheadings. So when you see this number of support on social media, then the problem is not small bunch of gangs doing some crime. That's much bigger of a problem that is infiltrating the whole society. So I think they need to do their mathematics and work before jumping to wrong conclusions.
Brilliant. Tawfik, I'm so sensitive to your time. I know every network on earth is always hunting you down. And so I'm going to come to a close, but I want to, as I said, I want to come back to this main point that those with money and governments need to recognize where support needs to go, because the jihadi networks are well funded,
Yes,
you say, well organized, and those who are working against it in serious and effective ways are just like marbles in a pot, right? Each one on his own, without the necessary support in order to meet the challenge of this
absolutely.
magnitude. Yeah. All right. Tawfik, I'm very
You,
grateful for your time. It's a precious thing, and I hope we can call on you now and then
a-
until we can get
anytime,
a
Frank, you
good
are
handle on it.
always more than welcome.
Thanks so
Bye
much
bye.
for being
Thank
with
you.
us today.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.